When the credits start rolling, but the movie keeps haunting you.
Before, after.
Then it's time to tune in to Dismembering Horror. We'll talk about what worked and also what didn't. We'll dissect every aspect. Maybe some of we shouldn't.
They turned out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Take it away, boys.
Take it away, we shall.
Oh, hello. Hi, Ryan.
Hello, Tim.
How are you?
Doing all right. Happy to be here. No verbal response. And thank you, everyone else, for being here, too, to Dismembering Horror, as she just said. But what she did not say specifically is we are here in episode 206 of Dismembering Horror, where we will be giving our patent pending dismemberment to...
Patent pending. With the patent region.
Yes, it's pending. It's pending. Been waiting a while. Yes, we'll be dismembering The Vanishing from 1988.
What a year.
Yeah. It is actually fun to get, I don't know, it's kind of like when I think of like Rain Man or something, just when you get these solid 80s movies. I don't know, it's an interesting decade when it feels like you have cinema emerge from them. There's something unique about it, like the 80s, 90s cinema.
I that's interesting that you say that, because I remember as I was watching it, not really knowing how to describe what was feeling good about it. Because it's not overtly stylistic in any way, but like there's something about the era. I don't know. Maybe it's the film stock.
Something about maybe
it's on film. Yeah, obviously
the film stock. Well, it's something about like maybe the 70s for our generations in our minds. Just have this, or just at large have this association with like peak cinema,
sure,
or just being able to get into the movie and the certain kind of realism and all that.
That might be it, because it really is a feel. I was like, this is so pleasant to me.
Great.
I don't know why.
Well, not
usually I do.
We're just obviously so excited to talk about it here.
Yeah.
So, but we got some business, some brass tacks first.
Oh,
according to my pages.
Wow. All right. Do we owe anybody any money?
Not right now.
Thank God.
But we do owe ourselves and our listeners and our viewers a trailer to set the stage here.
All right. We could do that.
All right. So let's do that.
Cool.
So, as I said, from 1988, directed by George, how have you been saying his name?
Sluizer.
With a screenplay by George Sluizer. That sounds like loser. Sluizer and Tim Krabbé, based on The Golden Egg by Tim Krabbé. Here we go. The Vanishing.
Je m'appelle Raymond Lemorne. Je suis sociopathe et claustrophobe. Je n'ai jamais trompé ma femme.
Ah.
Gabi, le tire-bouchon, s'il te plaît, dans le tiroir. Mais je m'empresse de vous dire que pour moi, le pire, ce n'est pas tuer. Parce que mine de rien, c'est devenu une passion. Tu as quelque chose dans la tête.
Vous êtes un menteur.
What was that, Tim?
What was that is a good question. That was a trailer.
Really?
I don't know.
Very interesting.
That's what it said.
Maybe just the Dutch, much like their films, the trailers have a certain idiosyncrasy to them.
The classic 1988 non-trailer trailer.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites. Have you ever seen the original, the Batman 88 '89,
Oh.
Batman '89 trailer.
Oh, yeah. Well,
It's hilarious. It's like so untrailery.
well, are you sure you're not just talking about the teaser trailer?
Maybe that's what it. No, not the one where it's just flying through the
Yeah.
thing. It's like it's an actual trailer, and it's pretty janky. It makes you wonder what the hell were they doing.
Late 80s, something about it.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's keep on trucking here with our rating per our rating system. Would we tell ourselves to avoid, stream, rent, or buy The Vanishing?
I am a rent, but a very hearty rent.
Great.
It's not quite exciting, I think, enough for me to be a buy. I think that's kind of where it, and I don't mean like action exciting necessarily. I just mean like,
I got it.
like it didn't get me wound up in the way that I want this type of sort of murder mystery, whatever, mystery, I guess, to get me going. But it's really enjoyable on so many levels. So I would absolutely pay some money to see it.
Great.
And I've seen it before. I mean, I'd seen it when I was probably, I don't know. I think I was probably in college.
Got it. Well,
But I remember nothing.
yeah.
So I
yeah,
was like,
yeah.
this is fresh. I was like, okay, cool.
Great. Maybe I just have to retroactively justify my purchase here. You'll see.
Yeah.
Got it right here. But I remember I saw it 10 years ago, bought the disc then. So it remains a buy it for me. I do not have buyer's regret.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I think it's great.
I
think it's
certainly
incredible.
would not be upset to own it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I would be like, yeah, that's a cool movie to have.
Yeah. No,
But yeah.
I think it gets better on rewatches just because the themes are so rich. And even now,
Yeah.
like I'm going to have some questions like, wait, what was that exactly that happened just there?
I have a couple of those for sure. There's one in particular that I'm a little confounded by. So
Great.
maybe well,
I don't think so, but
okay,
but
fair enough.
That does not hurt it because even then in those scenes, it's only affecting me still somehow.
Yeah. Okay.
And I watched it with a couple friends, and we just had the best conversations afterwards. So I'm excited to continue
Cool.
it with you today.
All right, I'm into it. Can you say do you think you can pronounce what the movie it's in Dutch, right? Yeah.
Spoorloos, which just sounded like a cookie to me. I don't know why.
Yeah, me too.
Spoorloos, which literally translates to traceless or without a trace.
I see. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, there was a trace, but we'll get to it.
Should we get to it now with our summary?
Sure.
All right.
Oh, God. Okay. Actually, I think that trailer was kind of interesting because it really does what the movie ultimately does, which is focus more on the sociopath. But we're really presented with the relationship between this married couple, Saskia and Rex.
Mm-hmm.
And they're on vacation in France. The tour is happening. That's exciting. And it's 1984. I don't know if I was trying to figure out while we were watching it what year it was supposed to be, and then eventually it said at some point. So it's 1984. They go on vacation. Rex, like any good, dumb man, arrogant dumb man, decides that they don't need to get gas when they pass a gas station, and Saskia suggests that they do. And then they run out of gas in a tunnel, which is pretty sketch, actually, if you think about it. Especially then, like, not really. I think I've been through, maybe not that tunnel, but when I was a kid, we went from Denmark. Oh, I guess we weren't in France. But this style of tunnel, certainly. We went
could
from
feel it.
Yeah, Denmark through Germany and Austria and Switzerland. It's all relatively similar. So I was like, this is a cool vibe, and it's scary. So there's a moment that kind of gets you in the mindset of why this is scary. Before they get into the tunnel, they are on a mountain, sort of narrow mountain road, and they have to make a left turn around the bend of the mountain, and he has to honk a handful of times, a little beep, 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 beeps to say, like, I'm coming around the bend, which I think is a really, like, smart indication of, like, the time and just sort of the antiquation of being on the road in these areas, that it's like, there's no signals, there's no lights, there's no signage, really. It's sort of, you know, you're out there on your own. So they run out of gas. They get into a fight because who knows? He's being kind of a jerk.
Yeah.
He's like, don't blame this on me.
The road's getting to them.
Yeah, I know it's my fault. Don't give me a hard time. It's like, all right, man, just chill out. And he doesn't let her, she wants to find a flashlight, and he's like, I'm out of here. I'm going to go get gas. You could come with me or not. Like, he's a real jerk about it. So he leaves her. And some amount of time later, he comes back, and she's gone. She's not in the car. This is called foreshadowing, Ryan, if you were wondering. He kind of dismisses it, which is a little also like, man, he sucks. Then he gets in the car, he drives to the end of the tunnel, and she's out there. She's moved on from the danger of sitting in the tunnel, which is smart of her. And then they make up, right? Like, whatever. They go to a rest stop, they kind of make up, and everything's great. She goes in, she buys a Frisbee. They kind of flirt and whatever. And then they bury some coins by a tree as sort of a, like, I don't know, remember this time in our lives. This becomes important later, sort of. And then she says, you want something to drink? You want something cold to drink? She goes in, she gets a drink, and that's it. She vanishes. This is all as far as Rex is concerned, right? She vanishes. 3 years go by. He's still looking for her, and he's gotten like breadcrumbs to find her somehow, which is the thing I want to ask you about. Eventually, he meets the killer because he's put out this sort of campaign, this endless campaign to find her, and the killer, the kidnapper. And the kidnapper and him meet up. The kidnapper basically says, you have nothing on me, so you have to basically go along. If you ever want to know what happened, you go along with me or screw off. So Rex goes along with him. The kidnapper explains himself and like why and what he did to a point. And then Rex has to sort of decide, like, do I carry on with him, drink some sleeping pill coffee, and leave it up to this kidnapper to whatever, to not kill me or whatever. But the only way he's going to find out what happened to Saskia, according to the kidnapper, is if he drinks that coffee, and he'll show him what happened. The kidnapper will show Rex what happened at that point. In that moment, Rex has a bit of a like, no way, I'm not doing this, screw you, whatever. And they're at the rest stop where she was kidnapped. And he remembers these coins that they had buried together. And when the kidnapper was telling the story, he explained that he had an interaction with Saskia in the rest stop before he kidnapped her, where she asked him for some change, and his fingerprints would be on those coins, which was a big point of Rex's, like, if we just found the coins from the vending machine that the guy was using, we could check the fingerprints, which seems absurd. But in this moment, it actually comes back around, pays off. He thinks, okay, I've got him because I've got his name, I've got his fingerprints, I have proof that he did this thing. So he drinks the coffee, and falls asleep. And the reveal of what the kidnapper had done to Saskia is that Rex wakes up in a coffin, buried alive.
Great.
The end. Was that long enough?
I'm trying to figure out what it... Yes.
Could you do it shorter?
I'm trying to figure out what it says about you and or the movie that your summary for the first 15 minutes took as long as the summary for the other 75 minutes of the film. I don't know.
Setup, baby.
Yes, it's all important.
The mood.
I just want to mention, I think it's a pretty important through line because this film is operating on separate levels of reality, that we have a recurring nightmare, or a nightmare that's brought up as recurringly through the film, where Saskia has experienced floating alone in the universe inside of a, well, titular as far as the original story, golden egg.
Right.
And then she mentions at a certain point that he has one too, and their eggs meet up and they're together forever or something like that.
But they can't touch each other. They're floating in space separately, but nearby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just, I don't know. That's got to inject that. It's more than the literal happenings.
Right. Also, a lot of the movie is actually, like the trailer, like living with the sociopath kidnapper and seeing how he and why he is the way he is, and him like practicing kidnapping people and getting himself into sort of tight spots that he has to learn how to navigate if he's going to pull something like this off.
All done via non-chronological storytelling.
Yes,
Don't
which is
we
really
love
fun.
it,
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Very audition feeling in a way, this movie, in that way.
Oh, yeah. It
the-
does have kind of that vibe, doesn't
Something
it?
about the way the narrative plays out puts me in a similar kind of
Right.
whooshy dream state.
I like this different kind of, I don't know, it's different structurally than a lot of like what we're used to in the States.
Yeah.
I think that's fun.
And to help us all out, which is what that summary was for, we've got Raymond Lemorne as the bad dude, the sociopath.
That's
the
right. That's a
kidnapper.
character's name, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Rex Hoffman as the obsessed husband-boyfriend. And then rest in peace, Saskia Wegter, who's referred to as Saskia throughout, as the woman who was tragically taken.
Yeah.
All right. Should we get into what worked?
Yeah, I think so.
Me too. All right, here we go. What worked?
What worked? What worked for you? What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm, Smith.
What worked? What worked for you?
I feel like we're going to get into so much about just themes and interesting filmmaking things and ideas that I almost just kind of want to get out of the way, the casting and performances.
Sure.
I thought those were incredible. I mean,
Yeah, everybody's so like to me so real and like almost documentary feeling, like these are just people existing.
Which I guess is the same as saying they're perfectly cast,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, in order of kind of how I mentioned them just now, Raymond, our sociopath, he has this really interesting quality where it's like you buy that he's able to present as normal and that like we would trust him because he's just so like certain and forthright in just sort of how to do that.
It's the beard.
Right.
It's the chin beard. It just like carries an authoritative, like I know it's up. If I'm willing to wear just a thick chin beard, no straps, just chin, no mustache, just chin.
Yeah.
That's a bold statement, and it says a lot about you as a person.
And it's fun. It's interesting because he's kind of presented as super intelligent or careful, but I don't know. He didn't strike me as necessarily like an intellectual, but more so as just obsessed and determined on his own side, just like that kind of sociopathic thoroughness.
Right. It's like a determination.
Yeah.
Right. Like he doesn't have to be smart so much as just he's like crunch the numbers, man. Just figure it out slowly over time.
Yeah, kind of like this in the scene where he successfully gets her to go to his car. It's his actual plan that makes it effective. It's his ability to sort of stay forthright and improvise within then. It's like he has that sort of determination within the moment and just almost feels like he lucks out because he's programmed it in manifestation terms, you know?
Exactly. He believes that it's all like fated and just like divinely happening. Not to get ahead of ourselves, but that sequence is so good. And like having him be the narrator, so to speak, of this two wrecks in the car is like such a, I don't know. For some reason, I really love the like this weird trope of the adversaries in a car. I don't know why. I mean, I wrote a short film that literally is that. So there's something about that feeling of being trapped in this little, box with the person and like, not knowing how you're going to sort it out.
Yeah.
And that the idea too that, and this plays into, I think, the broader theme and the climax of the movie. If you choose to, you could just get out of the box up until a point, right? Like there's a sort of a point of no return. But in reality, if we're, like in a car with somebody we don't want to be in the car with, you can just open the door at a certain point. I mean, if the car's moving at your own risk. But
Lady Bird.
But this thing, this escape is possible in that form. And then we arrive at the climax where it's a different box, right? It's a coffin. So I think that there's some fun, at least for me, just like thinking about these like correlations within the film of like being trapped in a box throughout is really fun.
Yes.
Metaphorically, figuratively, literally, whatever.
I mean, there's the thread I'm excited to go down, but I want to like get just mention these other actors too, what they're each doing. I mean, maybe you kind of just already said all that needs to be said as far as a certain realism, whatever. Like they're realistically attractive.
Sure, they look like people.
Yeah, and just the way she moves and operates, like when she has that little stumble.
Yeah,
you just
totally.
kind of fall in love with both of them in that way. And, in just that first 15 minutes. And just maybe this is plays into a little about, you're looking at the first 15 minutes as the breadth of half of the movie almost. But she, almost like Mandy or something, just has this presence throughout. Like her image on the missing sign just has such a presence like throughout.
Yeah, and that's really true. I remember thinking when I saw the US remake of this.
Oh God.
How disappointed I was that she's gone. And like that whole idea of, are we going to see her again? Just as the movie carries on, you just more and more realize, no. Like, no, 3 years went by. Chances are she's just dead. So it's not even about whether or not she's alive. It's about what happened.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think that kind of just making that decision as the framework of your story is really ballsy. To be like, we're gonna do a kidnapping story, but like the kidnapping is really not the point. You know, like there's something so fun about that. It's not like they're gonna save her,
right? That's why I don't know. It felt weird to me. You use the term. I mean, sorry if I'm just mincing your words here, but like murder mystery to describe it.
I know it's not really. It's a mystery. It's
a central question of what exactly he did.
Yeah,
but that's different from like, I don't know, usually it's trying to find the killer or if they're still alive, or I don't know.
Right. It's still it's a what happened.
Yeah.
Is that a genre? I mean, it's a mystery. What happened is the question. So
Just mystery just has a different connotation from there is a central obsession. Like maybe a movie like Zodiac kind of highlights that sort of intersection as well. You know, when a movie's about the a murder mystery is about the exception, but it's not like it's like Death on the Nile or something.
No, definitely not. I agree. I guess it's this sort of, it's this intersection of like true crime. Like a crime was committed and the answer needs to be revealed or sought out.
Right. Well, one way I was going to say it comes to mind that worked so well for me about how it shifts to, you know, not just being a murder mystery is the 3 years later, you know, setting.
It's a shocking moment, like to be like, oh yeah, we're just jumping in time here.
Well, I just realized it's like the perfect amount of time where you can imagine like his other, you know, his new girlfriend or whomever else might be in his life. Mm-hmm. It's where from their point of view, it's kind of like maybe you should make a choice to move on or not kind of thing. But from his point of view, it's not that long ago at all. Like 3 years ago, like it feels like that's when we started this podcast. It was yesterday,
that's right? There's a perfect encapsulation of that in the writing. When he's breaking up with or getting broken up with by the new girlfriend, she says something to the effect, paraphrase, you know, don't they say that it'll take you half the time you were together to get over a relationship, right? And meaning for her, it won't take that long because they've only been together for some number of months, right? A few months, she'll be over it. But for him, he can't get over it, right? For a number of reasons. There is no closure. Like, you don't just get over, like, so, it's not a breakup.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and she's kind of like sticking it in him in that moment. But like, even if he could conceivably get over it, I air quoted could instead of get over right then. Whatever. So even if he could, I don't know that we ever have been told how long they had been together as a couple.
I don't know.
But they're married, so let's assume it's been a number of years prior to this instance. You know, 3 years when you're married to somebody and you've lost them is like, it's this idea that you can reduce that experience to this like weird, childish, you know, colloquialism of like, oh, half the time to get over that you've been together to get over each other. But I love this dichotomy between those two attitudes and like the fact that he's just sitting there being like, fuck you.
Right, because we can so sympathize with almost both those points of view.
Totally.
From like the people who care about him, just wanting to see him embrace a new happy life. Of course, maybe, you know, you can't get over what happened or whatever. But from his point of view, like I get, you know, his obsession and all that, where it feels like from that day onward, which just that experience in itself is just a kind of, you know, unique trauma where it's all of a sudden, it's like you're the only sane one in a crazy world where it feels like the rest of the world is gaslighting you.
Right.
Just for on an emotional level almost of like, no one else in the world's going to feel what he went through, but you don't have anyone who tries to get on his level of sympathy. You know, I mean, it's so much about how it's a crowded space where the disappearance happens. So I can get his obsession at the same time for that so much more.
That the craziness. I mean, I think this is part of why not the true crime obsession or whatever is new. Like it's always existed, but the wave of it and how I guess we collectively have kind of gotten on board with that wave.
That it's just popular.
Yeah, it's popular and the access to it is so broad and people jumped on that and we're like, well, if people want it, let's make more of it. But that's not new. Where was I going with this? The true crime aspect of it, the unanswerable, I guess it's answerable, but the seemingly unanswerable mystery of what happened is so enticing and so compelling to dangle out in front of somebody, right?
Yeah.
And like I agree with him that like the not knowing is a goddamn nightmare.
Well, I think why true crime comes to mind is what this movie does so well, and what true crime does. It presents like all the most factual, knowable evidence about something just on the surface.
Right.
And that's what this movie's doing in a really interesting way too. I mean, like an example being the ending when he gets him to drink the coffee with the sleeping pill mixed in. It's not like he's trying to surreptitiously sneak him a sleeping pill.
No.
This has a sleeping pill. It just puts everything out in front. And that happens, I guess, to an extent. I forget exactly what it was, but in that car ride together you're describing, it's kind of like the way he's so forward about his sociopathy and what that means and their unique conflict with each other.
Yeah.
It just puts it all right there. It's in a way where it feels like kind of like all true crime documentaries too, where it feels like we're reaching a truth, yet somehow also just that there's something else we can never truly like understand and see.
Right. It all to me boils down to this dynamic of who is in control, who has power, and who's powerless.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when we're the victims of things, just humans are the victims of bad things, we want to reclaim this power. But sociopaths and psychopaths, they hold all of the chips, right? Like they're completely in control because they don't care, right? They care sort of insofar as they care like kind of what happens to themselves as a survival thing. But beyond that, they are aroused by the power that they hold all the time. That's sort of why they act on these impulses, is to keep feeling that control and power.
They aren't even emotionally deterred by when things go wrong. It's just sort of like, oh, that happened. It's not like, shit, man, that didn't work out. It's just
exactly. And the way the movie is presenting this is so brilliant, and it's just perfect to sort of shine a light on that particular dynamic, right? Like this dude, the sociopath, is completely in control of everything. He's always holding all the chips. Even with the coffee, he's there. Rex knows that he might die, but it's an unanswered thing. The guy's not saying, if you drink this, I'm going to kill you. It's so manipulative. I'm gonna dangle this out in front of you once again, just enough to make you say yes or whatever to go along with it. And you don't get to know what's going to happen until you do. But like that power dynamic is so messed up, and like it's scary. Like it's super scary to me when you are faced with somebody who you are completely at the mercy of. Like that's really scary to me. And I've seen it in life, you see it in various iterations, right? Like in some respects, you see it like physically. And I think like what women go through a lot of the time, right? Like their experience in life is to know fundamentally that they're often at the mercy of this power dynamic.
Something about though, how it feels in this case, maybe it's the type of guy that bad dude is, Lemore and Raymond, but it seems like it's not even him. Like he is acting as some sort of greater situation power at play, because like the way,
sure, I see why you feel that way.
Because like, yeah, the way he, what was I just going to say? Like the way he, what were we just talking about?
It's like a worldview. It's like his philosophy is speaking to the broader, like powers of the universe. Yeah, which is really also scary too. I mean, in a way, that's what it is. It's this complex of superiority or godliness, or like I can do anything because I've cracked the code of humanity or something like that, right?
Yeah, here I remember what I was going to say when we realized he could, like, when we have the question in our mind, couldn't he just tell him, oh, I put her, I buried her alive, right?
That's interesting. Could he?
Yes, but that is not the actual truth of what our hero Rex is after. To actually know what happened, you'd have to experience it, right? What happened to her? You can only know if you go through it.
This is a person believing that they are tasked with the God mechanics, like that it's their responsibility to prove this point.
Yeah.
Which is a very like angry God kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Like I find it fascinating because like it's like the opposite of hubris. Right? Like hubris is somebody thinking they can be godly and getting taught a lesson for it. This is like this weird flip on that where he's not the kidnapper who believes that he's got this sort of, what do you call that when you believe that you're a god?
I was going to say it actually does sound like hubris the way you're talking about it.
It does, but like hubris is a literary tool to teach a lesson about why you shouldn't do that. This is saying this guy is he's so devoid of of emotion or like care about that he can get away with that too. He's not going to be taught a lesson. Right.
I feel like he does show hubris in his obsession and belief in a certain philosophy.
Yes. I mean, in the act of that, but in the conclusion of it, he wins, which is what I mean. There's this weird reversal of that.
I just feel like I kind of like go zoom out just for a bit more, just kind of like context on these discussions here. What are some overarching things that worked again to sort of get into these different weeds here?
Sure.
I liked this. This is from an essay by Scott Foundis. This is how it ends. Just, some material that comes with the Criterion edition of this film. Like a dark mythic fable, it is deceptively simple in design, complex in its resonances, and timeless in its queasy appeal. It recalls one such fable in particular, Frank R. Stockton's The Lady or the Tiger, whose nameless hero must intuit which of the two doors in a gladiatorial arena leads to death and which to salvation. Only in Sluizer's film, there exists a diabolical third possibility that a single door may lead to both.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool. I guess that kind of continues where I was heading with this. The hubris of the characters is actually more on Rex.
Mm-hmm.
That his mistake as a human is not being able to let go.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That he thinks that nothing else matters. And that obsessive thing is sort of a form of hubris, I think, in this context. And so you got these really perfectly opposing, characters, right?
Mm-hmm.
One who cares so much that he's willing to, suffer the consequences, and one who doesn't care at all, except for his own, satisfaction, I guess, which is dark. It's like my favorite kind of stuff.
Right. I realized that quote I just read was less an overarching thing, like I said I wanted to get into, and more an interesting specific idea. So more just actually zoom out. Is just the idea like with, I mean, maybe this is why I thought of it too, but like a dark mythic fable, something where it's a super simple idea, or those are I don't know always, but often the the way he can get at something that's just like so rich, just thematically, idea wise. We're like, I mean, I'm just thinking about, so God, what is this movie about? It's about obsession, but it's about like ideas of love and coupling in reference to that. Sociopathy, obviously, is something like talked about on the surface, the side we present and the true self, all about, how the bad guy, how Raymond kind of like seeing his two lives in such a way.
Yeah.
That, I don't know, I those kinds of feelings always swirl around in me where it's like, does that mean there is like a singular theme and controlling idea? And that I thought was really interesting when I was thinking that. My friend, one of my friends I watched it with, Matt, he said, oh, well, the theme is fate. And then that got my head spinning again.
Yeah. I mean, it does feel mythical, right? Like there is sort of this Sisyphus theme going on, right? The rolling the boulder up the hill and then it falls down the other side of the hill and you do it for eternity. Like that is the lesson that Rex is sort of like going through, is a very Sisyphus style thing.
But he does get the boulder up.
Yeah, but then it falls back down. He's in a box. He's screwed.
No, he gets it. But like I
guess,
read in that quote,
I guess
he
that's
also
true.
gets his answer. He wins also.
That's right. Yeah, but he loses and wins. Right. Yeah, exactly. I also feel like Raymond, he sort of possesses this almost, Norse like Loki or trickstery sort of vibe that makes sense in the Scandinavian construct, right? He's got this weird, like, two-faced, unfeeling, but like, he's over. I feel like he would have like fawn legs. You know what I mean? Like
yes,
it just
he
has
that way.
Like the Billy Goat chin beard probably is maybe some design thing that they chose for that reason. I don't know, but like it certainly gives us the vibe.
Well, I get where
intentional or not.
I could get where Matt was coming from though, and he kind of put it this way. I thought it was really interesting. You just kind of think, what's being talked about? What are the sort of theme stated moments? So those big through lines, we have Raymond and his just sort of core belief philosophy, why he decided to jump off like the 2-story balcony when he was young.
Right.
It all has to do with, fate in that sense of he saw that it was inevitable in our reality that he not jump. So in his mind, that translated to, so of course I had to jump just to sort of show that. So, but then what Matt pointed out I thought was interesting was, well, that even in his mind, that's like comes from a place of almost working around fate or breaking the rules. That is his fate because he is that way.
But that but that is so arrogant, right? So it's again this idea that he thinks he operates outside of like
the rules of fate.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Which is kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
Which I think is that's what makes him scary.
Right.
Is he has this certitude that he has unlocked the code or whatever of the universe and like humanity, and he's operating outside of it. It's like, fuck you,
I feel
dude.
Like we got to take a drink on the show and we say certitude is scary.
I know. Right? It was from like our 3rd episode or something when we started talking about that.
But then it kind of, exploring the theme further, it's cool. It's in that idea of fate is, oh, right, take a drink. The idea fate in the golden egg story too, where
right.
That's that kind of idea that she plugged into the future of their situation. Because it's, the floating alone in space thing, it's just them in the coffins in their
You're right.
death.
It's like that's so true in this movie. I think initially I'm thinking of moments of foreshadowing or nods to themes. I'm thinking of it like when I'm watching it initially dramaturgically. But in reality, I think what the movie is doing so specifically is showing what they're fated to live out.
Yeah.
Right? So Rex leaving her because he's being kind of an asshole has a cause and effect. She disappears the first time, right? And again, it's this recurring thematic Sisyphus style thing where it's like you're going to keep making the same mistake over and over and over again because that's who you are as a character or as a archetype.
Which is the thing that Raymond's philosophy tries to break anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
But does it break? No, he thinks it is.
He's continuing to be who that person is.
Exactly. He's just being his archetype and he's self-fulfilling that, right? And like, so Saskia having the dream, everything is set. So I agree. I think fate is really the overall like thing that's going on.
Which even that
you
word,
can't change the outcome.
Right.
Nobody can change the outcome.
It's interesting because even that word, I mean, it just connotates how we experience in our reality, but fate is a future set thing. But what this film does, and what I think maybe I mentioned audition earlier is so fascinating, is it's like, no, fate you can think of in terms of not something that's predestined in the future, but something that's predestined in the term when you look at time as being non-linear. Like if you look at time as, you know, a flat circle, whatever kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, that's what this film is doing temporally, where you have those really, you know, just the very fact that there's flashbacks, maybe possible flash forwards or whatever.
Right.
But like, you know, actually one of the scenes that was in question, where I read it differently from my friends I watched it with, I was curious what you thought. There's when he's with the new girlfriend, and it's like, I read it as they were visiting the places that him and Saskia had already been, had gone on their trip together before her disappearance. Mm-hmm. And so he sees in that moment when he's with his current girlfriend, the car of him and Saskia going up, and he chases after it, just merging those memories.
Moment and that the way that's shot,
right,
is so good. It's so simple to just have in the actual, you know, in camera moment, the car drive by. But the effect it has, you know, immediately because of the context that we're in some other like realm of his brain
too.
Or whatever. And the blurriness between realities that we're experiencing through him in that moment are so effective.
So it only blurred further for me when my read on that was, it was, as I just said, a memory of their road trip before she disappeared. Matt said he was reading it as this is what could have been had she not been taken.
I wondered about that. I was unsure which it was. Which
could be literally lost in translation, missing something
totally,
in the
because
subtitles.
It seemed like right before that, they had kind of an argument, and then she says, well, something to the effect of like, well, let's go this way and carry on to this place, as if she's just picking an arbitrary place and it turns out to be the place that Saskia and Rex were going to go to.
Or he just can't help
that
but
were
picture
there.
it.
Or exactly.
They were never there. He just pictures it as if they had gone.
I'm fine with all, like, I don't care what it is. The scene is so eerie and such a really good representation of like trauma and like PTSD and like just the guilt and like agony of what he's experiencing is so good. Like him writhing around inside his sort of dream memory, whatever you want to call it, on the ground there, on this lawn overlooking this bucolic, amazing scene of like mountains, and there's this, whatever the place is, a little chateau or whatever. All of those things are just so well constructed to give you this really like unpleasant feeling. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I truly feel like the movie gets us, for all the characters, honestly, into them. Like I feel so clearly what I think he's feeling. And what Saskia is feeling. Like the sequence of her going into and interacting with Raymond, and trying to speak this sort of broken French and the frustration around all of that. Like, maybe it's because we know what's going to happen. I mean, we do and we don't. We vaguely know how it's going to play out, but we're getting to see the details of it in that moment. And like, I so deeply felt I understood what she was going through. And same with Raymond. Like, I mean, watching him interact with his family and be this duplicitous sort of person, but like, it's constantly leaking. Like, his sociopathy is just leaking all over the place. And we know that, but they don't.
Well, we wouldn't recognize it at all unless we did know the context. That's why those scenes are so incredible. Like him with his family after we know what happens after the disappearance. I mean, everything about him putting on that veneer of normalcy just immediately gets under my skin.
He's so good. He's so good at this weird, calm deflection. So like, it's so upsetting. Like, I think we've all probably met people like this on some level too in our lives. But like, so there's a couple examples, obviously.
I think we do it in less harmful ways too.
Oh yeah,
That's when we relate
totally.
to it.
He's practicing the move of incapacitating a woman in his passenger seat, and then picks his daughter up and continues to practice the move for himself. When she calls him out, he's like, did you hear about that girl who opened the car door and like flew out? And she's like, oh my God, did she die? She's like, well, she flew out of the car going, 40 kilometers an hour, whatever.
Right.
The calmness with which he's so facile and able to just like, deflect these things and come up with an excuse that makes sense is so disturbing. I mean, I remember it differently. That kind of was muddling a couple different things in my memory, but that I just remember it being just that isolated moment where it's more like because it's on his mind so much, it's like he just can't help but just put his arm around her like the way he's been practicing. But there's something I just found that so chilling because I just found it like deeply relatable, that it was just one of those things that's like we have our own inner worlds, or like maybe we were trying to work on like straightening our posture or something like that. Sure. Right. And it's something that like, then when we're alone, something makes us remember that and we do it, and almost feels like crazy person because it's just our own little world, our own reality. But it's just given we have been plugged into his context. He's been rehearsing this endlessly. And it just, I don't know, it just made what should be just a simple moment just so eerie and sinister. But I thought it was fascinating because it was also because I could relate to just it on a human level. Ugh. Yeah. I mean, he's in it. We've all done little pranks or whatever, like little things to get at people. But like the psychotic nature of him putting a bunch of they were spiders, right, in the drawer. He asks his daughter to open the drawer to get the corkscrew, and she opens it and there's spiders, and she screams or whatever.
I don't think he put the spiders in, but
I do.
Okay.
I definitely do. He immediately deflects her being like, what the hell, and being scared. And he's like, spiders are good for the environment or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, that is disturbing, like psychosis, to be like constantly justifying everything that upsets other people.
Yeah.
That's unpleasant to be around.
Just because that scene's in my mind now too. And just what I mentioned earlier about putting the obvious up forward, but in clever, not forced feeling ways, the having all the family members scream again. And it's just the context we get where there's something that's kind of like a fun bonding family moment. We just know, no one would hear screams.
But that's my point though. He is testing everything all the time. He set that whole that whole interaction up so that he could go ask the neighbor of that place whether or not he heard screams, so that when he kidnaps somebody and maybe they scream, he knows that he's good.
And
that's
but just the way when we see the family screaming, it just makes you feel so gross because they're so clueless.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
like there's another scene where that like made my skin crawl where his wife asks if there's another woman or is there somebody else, and he just goes no. And it's like then he launches into this borderline gaslighting style monologue about like what he's doing and like what he's doing with his time and how important that is, and if he was going to have somebody else, why that would be stupid of him, and how he only wants to be with her and why that's justified. It's like, it's so disturbing to watch somebody do that thing when you know he's full of shit. Like, oh, it's brutal. So I he's a really, really good villain.
Oh, so good. It's the best. And when we can be with him so much, and he still has an eerie quality. And I mean, maybe it's kind of bridge here to just like shout out examples that are just 5-star filmmaking, like where the ending, we've been sitting with him the whole movie, like for all, he shouldn't feel creepy. It's just like what I said that the movie is doing, where because it's all on the surface in a way, him just walking around, being with him, talking with his family, we're able to get at like a new level of sinister and just disturbing. That's great. When then we still use just 5-star filmmaking to highlight that, make us to hammer it in. Where like at the end, big finish when they're at the tree and it's dark and it's rainy. And the way between the windshield wipers going, or if they're going at all, I forget. Yeah, I think they're going on the slow speed. The way his face looks underneath the rain on the windshield, just that little bit of just dark, distorted quality. It's just oof. And then, God, I mean, one of my favorite moments is filmmaking wise, where it just like instilled me with a chill, was we have the whole scene at the cafe that he's been asking him, meet up at me here or whatever, if you're out there. Yeah. And we see him out of focus the whole time.
Yeah, you're thinking it's going to rack to him.
It just feels like it'd be natural to rack to him. And when it doesn't, it's just, it's so good.
That is such a fucking amazing choice directorially. Mm-hmm. To just be, I love the idea, and maybe this is just because this is, what we do and what we enjoy doing, but I just love imagining being on set and the DP is like, when do you want me to rack? And the director's just sitting there going,
don't do it, bro.
Don't. No, let's just not.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
it's perfect.
It's so exciting. Like what? I don't know why. I like imagining that ideas like that happen in the moment.
Yeah.
And you hear anecdotes where that's true, and sometimes it's
fun
true,
when
sometimes
they do,
it's not.
It maybe in terms of writing too, just because I didn't want to forget, we were talking about things being given context. I mean, maybe that's just all good storytelling is observing something within a certain framework context. And maybe I'd be curious if it's different from sort of setup payoff. Maybe there's overlap of the same thing, but the bookending shots or opening ending of the grasshopper, or no, that's not a grasshopper, praying mantis, where it starts off where it just feels like it's just a bit of scenic color to start the movie. Oh, praying mantis. Sure. I know, okay, maybe some ideas of praying mantises and its prey, whatever. Nothing. Oh man, nothing too deep or heavy.
But then to come, you scratch the surface and suddenly you're down the rabbit hole of metaphor.
Right, but then, right. But at the beginning, that's all we think it is. Point being, it even makes us think that there's nothing more to it because there's enough we could read into. So the fact that it comes in at the end with this perfect bookend of all of a sudden just giving this entirely new setup, payoff, context of, oh, there's the body underneath there, bodies underneath there. Like, it's so good.
But as a symbol too, the praying mantis, I think, can represent a handful of different interesting things. One, just the visual of it, and like it being called a praying mantis. We could just ungender it and say, oh, that's just, an evil, weird, creepy looking thing that is gonna attack you. Right? Sure. That I can take at face value. But then if you talk about like the praying mantis, what is it? Female praying mantises will like eat the head of their mate or something like that. If you apply that to this story, I can see a version of that metaphor working in that if Rex is the mate, the male mate, and Saskia is the praying mantis, his obsession with her is his demise, right? His coupling with her is his demise. And so it works to me on that level as well.
Sure. I mean,
right?
I didn't feel the need to dismember the praying mantis metaphor.
I do, right? Like the fact that that's where, like, that you put it in the movie and that it's the opening and closing shot, like, makes me go, I wonder what I can, extrapolate from that further. And that, I think, is fun and exciting. Well, and you could take it just at face value. It's just nature.
Talking about visual motifs, themes, all that. We have them in the golden eggs, and then our final image of the movie, to the actual final image, is them in their own circles, basically.
Right,
their
on the
own,
newspaper.
Floating eggs. Well, no, I mean, so yeah, yes, maybe, yeah, in the newspaper, but it's actually just two circles over black.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, so they dissolve from the image, the pictures on the newspaper, they dissolve the newspaper,
right.
So it's just them in black, yes.
But then, yes, you're right. Like the cover art here, the motif on the design here, it is the idea that a bunch of little dots make up pictures in the newspaper.
Yeah, that's true.
And then also the motif on the it's in the movie and used in the the lone flame of the lighter in the coffin is like just the sole imagery on the menu.
Yeah.
But just, I don't know. It's so cool when you have all these things where you feel this sort of overlap and like that the meaning is all saying something about one another, their sameness, the inside a coffin, inside a golden egg in the
inside
dream, inside
tunnel.
a circle, inside, and it just makes you view then, I don't know, all these other ideas within that context in a way. It's just be spinning in the best of ways.
Yeah, it's so interesting because there's also this
the tunnel.
Yeah, there's this other. So that all those motifs I feel like are inside their story, and then there's this other thing of how they are existing in the world and how the world is this outside thing looking in on them.
Just like how he feels at the gas station.
Exactly. It's in the gas station. It's in the town square at the cafe, right? You're surrounded. It's this town square surrounded by onlookers, right?
No
It's
sympathy.
It's a fishbowl.
Yeah.
Those things, even the news report, like the fact that this is being broadcast out to all these people's TVs, right, has that vibe to it. There was one other thing I was going to say about Raymond too that I think is so disturbing in this context of the psychosis thing. Him saving the little girl who's potentially going to drown in the canal, him jumping off the bridge, has nothing to do with him saving the girl. Right? Has everything to do with him being titillated by the idea of, can I jump off this bridge? Like, again, it's just this like...
Oh, wasn't his thinking all the time something about the idea of showing... No, it was after he does it when he was surprised at his daughter's reaction of, oh, she is now seeing him as the perfect person. He has to do something that's the opposite.
In the same context of why he had to jump off the balcony in the first place. It's just... It's so twisted, but so accurate to, I think, what we often experience either ourselves, like in questioning everything, or in how we see people who are really down that deep whatever path of how they view the world. But anyway, so these other motifs is even that I think relates kind of back to this fishbowl thing that I'm talking about.
Right. Like when we see someone in a newspaper who's, so-and-so is missing, those dots, the fact that it's just dots in the context of the motif there is, yes, we cannot totally sympathize with them. We go, oh, isn't that sad? But I'm okay.
Right. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
I don't know. Where do we go from here? I mean, there's so many moments.
Well,
too.
there's, just something I was going to mention earlier, or ask you earlier, but we kind of moved on about what was reality or not. What was your read on, like, what was that scene where he's on the computer looking up her name all about? Because I just got it was like he was looking for her name for some kind of maybe just if she appeared in a database of other articles around the world. But then the way her name popped up a bunch, I thought that was another kind of reality bending moment, but wasn't sure.
I was confused a little bit by that too.
It worked though.
I'm fine
just the
with
feel of her name popping up. It was still cool.
It felt kind of, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Yeah,
like it made me feel in that realm. So I just accepted that it was, I didn't think that it was reality.
Okay.
I think it starts as reality for him, and then we see it cascade into this sort of just a depiction of his obsession.
Yeah.
Or a dream sort of mode or whatever. I also was confused. There was a really confusing thing for me is how did he know to go to the square in the cafe? Rex, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it seems like he was told to go there by Raymond somehow.
That's why I was confused by, because I'm
super confused
I'm pretty
by
sure
this.
In the summary it was hopefully this is all under what worked too.
It works because it's confounding. Like I feel like I'm under a spell.
I'm pretty sure,
and Raymond's spell. Like I'm at the mercy of this.
I'm pretty sure he's been sending. Like I understand how I follow it is that he's been telling Raymond if he's out there, which he knows he is, to meet him at that cafe.
Gotcha.
So, but I was confused then. Was it then just total kismet / coincidence that Raymond has an apartment there?
Right.
That's where it got confusing.
Yeah. So my assumption is that we missed something that suggested that Raymond had left a breadcrumb.
Okay.
But I don't know.
I mean, this is all obvious too, but just last things on my mind, what worked. I mean, talking about meeting audience expectations, where we're at, and then subverting them. And it was fun watching with my friends too, where you think the goal of the intro is to sympathize with this couple so we care about their situation, right? And then we have this first, it's the fake out disappearance where, we know it's the vanishing. It's about woman goes missing. So it was this fun beat with them. They totally were expecting that is when the titular vanishing happens, but it is not. And just all that's so good as far as then involving the audience the way that lets us then be with the characters. And then so when it does happen, it's just all that much more just sort of a rug being pulled out from under us.
Yeah.
It's not the middle of the night in a tunnel. It's daytime surrounded by people. All the more terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. And the failed attempt at the rest stop too.
Oh yeah, seeing all his tries
is just all his tries. Actually, I think one of my favorite moments in the whole movie, which you could keep or lose. Really, it doesn't affect the story much, but I just love the moment that he's practicing trying to ask women where the whatever it is, drugstore or something like that is, and he asks a woman 2 towns over or whatever from where he lives, and she knows him.
Mm-hmm.
And moments like that and she calls him out really hard. She's like,
in a very French way, my friends thought.
yeah. she's like, hey, by the way, if you want to go pick up women, like maybe go to a town where you won't run into somebody you know. I love moments like that so much. And I'm not even really sure why. It's like weirdly, the watching somebody get caught for some reason in their shittiness is so satisfying. It's like cathartic to me. And then like having her stick it to him.
Well, it has this.
I love it.
I don't know. It's this weird effect to this paradoxical thing going on where it's like, yes, like,
oh no, he's gonna get caught.
Yeah. Where it's like, because we're with him so much, it's like as terrifying and disturbing as it is, it's like it brings out my own sociopathy, it feels like, because I just get caught up with what he's practicing. Like it's its own montage sequence of wanting to see him be able to successfully run up the steps at the end.
Well,
like when he finally is getting the momentum to successfully kidnap her, I'm going like, oh right, whoa, this is also, wait, what? Like,
well, but that's because
crazy.
We are feeding off of the drama of it, the conflict of it. Like, I think, it's the hurdles. We're watching somebody go through the trials and tribulations, regardless of their horrible intention.
It's adversity overcome.
Exactly. We're getting this push pull and this up and down of like, oh no, is he? No, it's reversals, right? Like, oh no, he's gonna get this lady. Oh no, she knows him. Oh no, that's so much fun just from storytelling standpoint. Like, you don't have to feel bad. It's not like you're rooting for him, but you kind of are, right? Like, because the story needs to go somewhere.
There's definitely more, but I'm satisfied.
There's so many.
This is a 5-star movie. I think it's a classic for a reason. Like kind of that quote I read at the beginning where it's an old fable tale quality. Movies that do that, they just are just the classics. Like this is the kidnapping movie as far as I'm concerned,
Yeah. Oh man, I wish I could think of something else that has this kind of like marquee moment of like the twist. I don't know what, nothing.
Well, I want to
totally comes to mind, but the one moment, the absurdity of him scraping to find anything that might lead him to the kidnapper and coming up with this crazy idea that if the guy was standing at a vending machine, he had to have put a coin in it. And if we can just find that coin, we can get his fingerprint. Like, that's completely insane to think that that's a method of tracking this guy down. So, and he repeats that a handful of times throughout the movie as like a goal. To have that come around and have him think, oh, I've got him by finding the coins that Rex knows Raymond touched because Raymond told him the story of giving that change to Saskia. And having Rex dance around like, I got him. Yeah, I'll drink your coffee. Gotcha, motherfucker. Absolutely, because the logic doesn't still continue. It's Rex just feeling like he has been vindicated.
So I didn't necessarily read the moment like that it was something about the coins and a matter of proof one way or the other that then gave him the feeling to drink it. My read on, and this is actually what I want, maybe it's a different read, but as far as how I read it, it was an incredible moment for me where you're going, okay, well, what could actually, I saw it as the emotion that stirred up of feeling like that connection to the day itself again and the memory of him burying those coins with her. Like I was like in that moment, well, what could possibly get him to then just be so actually feeling like he'd risk death? Pretty much, 99%, honestly, right? He's probably going to die if he drinks the coffee. But I could get it in that moment that it would just hit you so hard. It's like, it'd be like seeing like photos didn't exist and you saw a picture of her or something like that. Or you just went to that same spot. That's what it is. Just that memory of being with her, being happy then, loving her that much is just so strong. I mean, he literally was like running in
I know.
circles.
But
It makes him so
I don't
emotional.
disagree. I think it's all of those things. I think that all those things are wrapped up in it. It's him being vindicated that his idea was right. Him being vindicated that he got the answer. Him being cathartic that he's like, oh, she exists. This happened. These things are here. Like, I'm not crazy. Him feeling close to her in that moment.
Yeah.
Him being like, this was this thing. This is the last thing we did together.
The physical evidence.
The physical
it
evidence
is real.
of that relationship is right there.
Maybe I'm not crazy.
It's all those things wrapped up in one. So after 3 years of insanity and like obsession and like being wrapped around the the telephone pole about all of this, to see this thing that has all of it in it at once, and for it to foreshadow him being buried as well, that it's these things that she and him buried together, and now they're going to end up buried together, but not really, but whatever.
Floating in
next to
space,
each other.
yes.
Like all of that, the fact that it's coins, that those are round too, like all of these things are just like in this perfect way locking together in
Right.
that moment.
Thinking in terms of like, yes, things locking together. Her what's so terrifying about her nightmare floating in space alone is the loneliness of
Right.
that, thinking in terms of forever. And that's exactly what he has been experiencing, being the only one in his plight.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I mean, this is really good writing.
Oh man.
I love it.
I'll be curious if you have anything for this next section, the way you're talking about it. It seems like it'd be a buy for you, but
Let's find out.
okay, then let's do it. And our next section, what did not work?
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
Anything that actually did not work, Tim?
You know, at first, I really felt like Rex didn't work. At first. And then I don't know what it is. Maybe it was just my initial feeling that like he was such a jerk. When we first meet him, the first time I see him, I remember I just sort of had this thought, well, that's not a leading man. But then you know, like as we talked about it, obviously that's
Like, says who?
right. But there was something about like my very initial feeling about him that I was like not charismatic. And that ended up not being true at all. So I don't know what was going on initially. There really isn't. I mean, God, we didn't even really talk a ton about the time jumping, which I love. So, like, I can't think of anything overt that I didn't like. I was surprised when we watched the trailer that we watched. The music sounded corny. I don't remember taking note of the music at all. I felt like it worked
That's probably
perfectly
great.
well.
So that was what I may be more speaking to, not something that didn't work, but something that I'm glad worked that could have been at risk of not working.
Sure.
Was the music. Where
Yeah.
I kind of mentioned almost that before. Maybe it was with like how legitimately scary The Stepfather could have been without that certain score, or like I haven't seen it in ages, but I remember Henry Portrait of the Serial Killer having like a certain realistic starkness that like the music kind of took away from. But I think now I'm just like all on board with it. Where I kind of say this too, coming off of one of my friends I was with, she was like, is the music supposed to be funny? And we were kind of like, I think it's just, it's just dated. It's just 80s. But then I realized when saying that, I'm like, okay, but I'm not in that place right now. Like, why is it working for me? And I think it might have something to do with we've reached a loop around in just synth 80s sounding style being
totally agree.
just being absolutely in. Like, because I've heard enough like new, cool, good throwback music.
Right.
I'm like plugged into the effect that it has and how it does work and how it can feel just good in its own way. So like,
I remember thinking when we
Yeah.
saw Audition, I felt the same way. I didn't like the music because of this.
similarly, I don't remember
thing.
any music in that.
But then, like, this probably is very similar. I don't know. So, like, I don't, you know, I guess, like I said at the top, why it's a rent. It didn't have sort of an excitement level that maybe was just an expectation. I don't know.
Well, this is what I was curious about. I wanted to mention actually one more thing in what worked as far as just like key moments. I wanted to mention, I just think the ending of him waking up trapped in the coffin is just like one of the great end moments where
Totally.
I say that based off of the first time I saw it, of just like the heart sinking, almost feels like a twist, but at the same time, just like inevitable. Fate has sealed. It's
Sealed
fate.
like a coffin.
Yeah. So just, I felt like it's a famous ending, just had to mention it, but it's interesting because I had, you know, there's only that you can only see it a first time once. So it doesn't have that effect anymore. It was interesting how in my memory of it, that was literally how the movie ended when actually we have the little bit of the imagery in the anyway, you had maybe a muddled memory of it all. So did it have that same impact for you where it was totally a shock and surprise, like as maybe / can you remember even that about it, seeing it originally, because it is kind of famous for that ending?
I think I just knew it. Regardless of having seen it. It's like we've watched enough of these like great movie horror moments or whatever. I've seen, I don't know, a dozen of those weird, fun, listicle documentary style things where they're like, remember this scary moment in this movie?
That's why I don't watch those unless I've seen the things in them, and then I love them.
But I had seen it, so you know. But yeah, I was not. I mean, I was tickled, but I think I knew it was coming.
Okay, interesting.
On some level, I knew it was coming. Like it was not an oh my god. It was like that's right.
This is such a ridiculous thing. I don't know. I don't even want to mention it because it's so stupid. But I just had to ask,
please,
where I could get it. Maybe I don't know if it's what did not work, but I just had the thought when he's trapped in the coffin with a lighter. Wouldn't you / can you, try to burn your way out?
I thought about this too. I had that thought. I was like, because of course you're in the mindset of like, oh my god, how, like, you're screwed. How do you get out? And I thought all of these little like scenarios. So no, you'd asphyxiate very quickly because your oxygen in there is very limited. So you would turn that oxygen into carbon dioxide immediately. And you just inhale the smoke and die.
Okay.
Because there's gonna be smoke from burning the wood.
But you can you like hold your breath for 3 minutes?
Can you? For 3 minutes?
I think.
Do you know how long it would take to burn that box?
That's also, what I don't know. No,
it would take a long time.
Not to burn the whole box, just to get a little tiny hole that you could.
Sure. Let's.
I don't want to find out.
Let's play this out, though. I don't disagree. Sure. Let's say you did the minimum effective dose of burning that didn't asphyxiate you. You're still losing the oxygen in there, right?
I understand.
So right.
For
so
how
it's
long?
super limited. So let's say you get just a little. You could poke your finger through and you can break the board. Let's say that. You're still screwed because the dirt that you would have to displace, let's assume that he's buried the standard, more than 5-6 feet. Let's say he's around 6 feet. So that coffin, this is so stupid. If that coffin is 6 feet deep, it's like 3 cubic feet or whatever that is. Or that would be 9 feet, whatever, 2 cubic feet. You would have to pull dirt down, put it at your feet, right? Enough to get your pull your body up. I just don't think it's possible. We should try it though.
Let's get the Mythbusters on it.
Yeah.
1988's The Vanishing.
I bet you
Would
somebody
it be possible. Jamie.
I bet you they've done an episode like, can you survive getting buried alive? I just don't think it's possible because I think the dirt would just suffocate you.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
Well, fair enough. Should we move on? Things of note.
Sure.
All right. Things of note.
This should be interesting.
Did you have anything that was interesting or noteworthy, Ryan?
A question for you, since we've talked about it before with Angst. Any film where I just am so fascinated with and love it when it has this utter realism, oftentimes with the performances especially.
Yeah.
But that's also the quality of how it looks visually. Just feels real. Yet there's also like clear filmmaking going on in shots, framing, yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the 1:6:6 aspect ratio and generally square aspect ratios help give a sense of realism versus, let's say, a 2:3:5 or 9?
Realism.
Think like, The Witch, The Shining, Henry Portrait of Serial Killer.
I don't know. I get that we believe it does. The greater we.
Is it more, quote, cinematic?
I don't know
or,
what
quote,
that means.
Epic to have the wider ratio?
I just think it's different, but I do agree there is an effect that it has. Like on some level, it's making us feel something different. But do I think that difference is realism? I just don't know. I don't know what you pull the idea of realism from, in the same way that I don't know what you pull the idea of cinematic from, other than like repetition, that we've created this widescreen format and said that it's cinematic, and so that became cinematic.
Right. So is it programming or something outside of programming that's deeper? I think it could both.
I bet you the answer is yes.
Yeah.
But I don't know why, and I don't...
Wait, yes, meaning it said in that sort of smart way because I asked two things?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, I think it's probably both. I think there's probably a psychological effect that it has on us that is not programming, but I think programming does also play a role. And I don't know how... I don't think that I see that stuff and am conscious of the effect, if there is one. I noticed, just by virtue of seeing where the black was on my screen, and thought nothing of it. I just went, oh, it's that.
But thinking about it, do you feel it engaged you in the sense of this is more realistic? You're just sitting here in this reality with these people?
No, I'm not. I don't think I don't think that thing has an effect on me for some reason. Because even when people are like, oh, see it in IMAX, it's so much, whatever. I still just am watching the movie.
Well, IMAX is it's bigger.
Sure.
Dude, the birthing
but
opening of Beau is Afraid in super loud IMAX. This is the best.
Fair.
Well, we've mentioned Kubrick twice in this episode already, so I feel like I gotta mention him again here because Kubrick, yes. Kubrick was a huge fan of this film.
Okay.
George, this filmmaker, told his buddy Stanley told George that he watched this 10 times. He discussed it with him regularly, on the phone whenever he saw each other. Kubrick said it was the most terrifying film he'd ever seen. And George would reply like, yeah, but dude, you made The Shining. And Kubrick's like, this is Shining's child's play. Like, this is actually the most terrifying thing ever.
Yeah.
And you think of Kubrick has always had, especially with Eyes Wide Shut, definitely the idea of marriage, significant others is just something very much near and dear to him. Or, he's a romantic at heart in a way.
Yeah. Do you want to hear something interesting or noteworthy?
Yes, but last thing on the Kubrick was, just to show much of a fan he was. He had cast the Saskia in his film that was never made, the Aryan Papers, which he was working on for the early 90s. So she was going to be the lead of that. So there's like interviews with her about that, different sort of stuff from the casting process with her.
Well, other than that one, I've still never seen Barry Lyndon.
Was that what you were just going to say?
Yeah, that's my Kubrick anecdote.
Tim,
or factoid.
It's great. And
I know. I've seen all of his other films at least twice each, probably a little bit more than that. And I think it's become this weird like albatross where I'm like, I almost don't want to see it.
It's like never reading the last chapter of Harry Potter or something.
Sure. Yeah. The perfect example, because I was so into Harry Potter. I don't know why.
We live in LA. A repertory screening will happen every 3 years.
I'm sure. Maybe that's what it'll take. I have to see it in a theater.
I saw it at the Egyptian, man.
Yeah.
So good.
That's what it'll take. I'll do it if it's in a theater.
It's great. It's great.
I don't want to watch it on a TV. I just don't.
It's so good.
Especially considering how much I've heard about how it was visually composed.
Any things of note you had for this one?
Other than I remember the remake being like okay. Although I think Kiefer Sutherland is like improperly cast, so it's hard to get into.
That's one I'm okay being an albatross for me. I don't.
It's not. I mean, it's fine. It's just. I mean, why would you watch that if this exists?
I'm sure it would be a really interesting study, especially for where we are now, as well as at the time, just in sort of an exercise in what does the money funding entity think people want that will guarantee more money?
Actors they recognize. That's it.
That's it.
That's it. I think actually a really fun exercise. Maybe I'll start making a list of these these foreign movies that get remade like within a couple years of the original. Like,
matter if it's by the same filmmaker or not, because same filmmaker for these two, same filmmaker for Michael Haneke for Funny Games, making both versions.
Doing that version I think would be fun first.
I can't think of more examples than that, but I'm sure they're out there. It's definitely a thing.
There's definitely a bunch. I mean, Let the Right One In was not the same director,
wasn't it?
Or was it?
Obviously. Yeah, maybe that was. I don't know. Same with not Ringu. Gore Verbinski did the remake, but maybe Ju-on the Grudge, I think, was the same filmmaker as the original too.
It seems possible. I mean, I don't think the same director did Goodnight Mommy, but that has an American remake too.
So what would you want to note, or what's your exercise you want to do?
It's not even an exercise. All I would want to do is look up if ever the American remake was successful. Like, I don't know what the metric to classify success is. Did it make its money back, I guess?
Ju-on the Grudge definitely was, because
That's
that
true.
had a sequel. I think Funny Games did all right.
But did it do better? I think there must be some way to say, okay, here's how this did there. Can you create the same metric for here?
Or
box office, or
maybe within that too. And I haven't seen the Funny Games remake.
I've seen both.
Then maybe you could speak towards it better. But in some cases, it's kind of an apples and oranges thing. I don't know.
It is, but it isn't. Like, it's shot for shot. So I don't know. I just think it's a weird, fascinating thing that exists in film.
Yeah.
This like weird, basically 1-to-1 remake style thing. Goodnight Mommy was not a 1-to-1, and they cut out some of the greatest stuff from the story to water it down for an American, this is in air quotes, an American audience.
Or I hated that they did the one with like Wreck is like just one of the best found footage movies.
Yeah.
And then that was turned
it just
into...
doesn't live up to the original. Yeah, so I just feel like that no, the answer is no. American remakes don't work.
Well, it's also kind of muddled it when you jumped to those when is not the original filmmaker.
Totally.
So I don't know.
So yeah, I think as a parameter, doing the original filmmaker would be interesting because there can't be that many, right?
I don't know, man. Yeah. Our buddy George, in an interview with him, it was interesting. Something we talk about a lot, but just to hear it from the horse's mouth, he says, he only believes in gray, not just black and white, as far as we have everything in us.
Sure.
We have gray inside ourselves. And this was the Dutch submission for the Academy Awards that year for Best Foreign Language Film in 1988, but it was disqualified because the Academy determined there was too much French dialogue for it to represent the Netherlands.
Oh, God. Don't get me started. Great.
The wise Academy leaders.
Oh, man.
All right.
Okay.
Anything else for this movie?
No.
Great. Shall we vanish from the vanishing?
Yes, please.
All right. Let's wind down some RecommendDEADtions. Speaking of Kiefer Sutherland in early 90s thrillers.
Not Mirrors.
Not Mirrors. I was early aughts, right? Mid-aughts. I got to recommend the sequel to one of those films. So Freeway is the film I was referring to about him going after Reese Witherspoon in a kind of like Little Red Riding Hood, like, story structure.
Yeah.
So it's great.
Vaguely remember.
So maybe
this
I want to
movie.
make my recommendation that and the one I really want to recommend because I feel like that's kind of has a cult status. A lot of people have seen it. Highly recommend Dead, the sequel, Freeway 2, Confessions of a Trickbaby.
What?
And now it's the same director.
What does that mean?
It's the same director, Matthew Bright.
Confessions of a Trick Baby?
Yes. Stars, Natasha Lyonne. It's great.
Cool.
Just because I liked these two letterbox descriptions of it better than I could ever say. So just to help sell you on it.
All right. Let me take a sip of coffee.
From the letterboxed user Woo, W-U. Freeway 2 takes the fundamental premise of the original, a woman unjustly imprisoned, violently revolting, and utterly unmoors it from reality. I don't often write much anymore, but in this case, this is a film that left me truly speechless. It's true blue exploitation cinema that insults all notions of good taste, and because of that, its beautiful queer love story only gains potency. And then from Electric Wizard X, John Waters meets unapologetically offensive 70s exploitation sleaze meets buddy criminal film with a lesbian Starkweather and Fugate murderously evading the coppers on the way to Tijuana in a vague, darker retelling of Hansel and Gretel made in the very late 90s.
Wow.
So it's, yes, similar in kind of themes and ideas and characters and tone to the original, and it's really interesting. While the first one is Little Red Riding Hood, this one's Hansel and Gretel retelling. It's great. I recommend both. Yes, I'll go ahead and just recommend both of them, Freeway and Freeway 2, Confessions of a Trickbaby.
What a title. I think you recommended what I'm going to recommend previously, which was Knock at the Cabin.
I had talked about seeing it, but I don't think I recommend. You just asked me how I liked it. I didn't recommend it.
Yeah. Did you like it?
Yes, it's out of what I call the Shyamalan-essence, meaning all his films post whatever those sci-fi movies he did. Yeah. Basically, The Visit onward, I think are great. I love his movies. Right. This was the bottom of the pile for me.
So you liked Old more than this?
Old's his modern masterpiece for me.
Interesting. I liked this more than Old. I didn't love Old for certain weird reasons, but I man, I really liked this. I think Dave Bautista, for one thing, is like this very curious, like, I don't know what to call him. He's something's going on.
Is it?
I don't know what, but I love him.
I'm always curious to ask because I just get excited when people also enjoy the new Shyamalan movies. I think a big part of that is finding a way to, I don't know, you almost have to reconcile, or just maybe it's not even conscious, but you're just getting on board with some people would maybe, a polite way to put it that some people may not. I love it, but is the unique way he writes characters and dialogue.
Okay, so
maybe you could use that for Dave Bautista, how that he kind of clicked or into that for you. I'd be curious. But how did it work for you in that sense?
I think this one's working more because it's less Shyamalan-y. Because he didn't, I mean, he wrote it, but he's basing it off of a book.
Mm-hmm.
And I think having that like foundational thing is good for him. I think it helped in this case.
Old was based on source material too.
Yeah, and I can see that in it.
But it's still like the dialogue and just the way the characters exist in the world. For me, I can get on board with it. It feels like it's sort of a throwback to like B movies in a way. And as well as just the performances are still really good underneath that. That they just sort of make it. I don't know. It feels like it's a movie, and I'm not watching it like how I would The Vanishing or something.
I don't know. I don't want to get deep into trying to figure out why or what it was, but I think thematically more than anything, and just the compellingness of Dave Bautista, as well as just every other actor in it, I think was doing an incredibly good job. And I like all those actors. So, maybe that's all it took, is like even the little girl who I've never seen obviously before, but like, I was like, she's really great. But like the themes were hitting home. I was like, oh God, this is society, man. It's society. It's a metaphor for society. And I just like got hyped about it.
Cool. It is a good story. Yeah, no, I liked it.
And the question, I love the impossible question. Or the impossible choice, rather. I love an impossible choice. It's always exciting. How are they going to figure it out? They don't.
That's good stuff. Cool. Glad you saw it. Glad you liked it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we could wrap up. Thanks, everyone, for being here with us. Love having you. In closing, is it fate or what we make, or perhaps door number 3?
All of the above.
Thanks for listening.
And we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.